one more still. I'll let you know either Thursday or Tuesday of next week. I just haven't decided whether I want to do this or not. Here's the first change. It's a biggie. It's regarding the papers. And I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. Let me put down what it is first and then I'll talk about it. Changing the required length, it's not increasing. From 1,600 to what should have been actually not 4,000 words, but to 3,000 words, right? That is approximately 5 to 5.5 pages, maybe 5 3/4 pages. That is, you're on the 6th page, and this is approximately 10. It's really going to be somewhere between 9 to 10 words, not pages. And I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. Let me, the one other change. Minimum of 5 secondary sources. Now, with this caveat, this applies more for if you're at the shorter end. Okay? If you're writing a 10-page paper, you probably should have a minimum of 8. Notice, probably should. That does not mean required. Okay? Now, let me give you the reason for it, one of the reasons for this. And I've got another change to make also. Yeah, I know, we're taking up Hamlet time. We're not going to finish the damn play anyway, so. I glanced over the sonnet papers, and one thing that immediately struck me is nobody began the sonnet paper with printing the sonnet. When you do an explication, how many of you have had the 3,000? I shouldn't ask this question because I know my balloon is going to be popped. But I will anyways. How many of you have had the 3,000 course? The Intro to Literary Studies one. Did you do an explication in there? Okay, it's the balloon that just went. Usually when you do an explication of a poem, what you begin with is you print the poem. You just print the poem in its entirety. When you're, unless you're doing Paradise Lost, because you don't have the page to do that. But with a sonnet, you've only got 14 lines. Okay? So you print those 14 lines, and then you go through and talk about it. That way, your reader, obviously in this case me, but imagine other readers, your reader can frequently go back to, when you reference line 3, go back to line 3. Because not all of you, some of you did, but not all of you, you would make a comment about a line number, but would not include that line. Okay? You got to include that line so that the person can compare what you say about the line with what is actually there in the line. Okay? So I'm going to throw this out there. This is the thing I haven't decided yet. I'm thinking of treating those differently than an exam. Because if I were to be strictly honest and stand by my integrity as a grader, they probably would not get a lot of high grades. Okay? And I don't want to sink anybody with that. So I might turn those to extra credits. In which case, everybody's going to get something. Okay? I just don't know how much. Here is, however, the other change that does involve extra credit. Because nobody in here has, to my memory or to my recording in my grade book, which hopefully is correct, nobody has done the recitation yet. Okay? That's now extra credit. Okay? What I don't know yet is how much. Somewhere between 20 to 30 points. Okay? If I change the sonnet exam 2 extra credit, that will probably also be somewhere between 20 and 40 points. So, if you didn't do well on the first exam, and you've already done the sonnet one, so like I said, everybody's getting something from that if I change it to extra credit. If I don't change it to extra credit, then it'll still be an exam, it just won't be worth 100 points. Maybe it'll be worth 25 points. Okay, so it won't sink anybody, it won't hurt anybody that badly. Probably if I do them both, they'll probably be worth a total of 40, maybe 50 at the most, because I don't want to overload it, because that kind of, dilutes the value of the actual exams. So somewhere in that range. If I do that with the sonnet thing, this I'm doing. Okay? So if you've already started memorizing a 30-line passage, I would finish it and go ahead and do it. And one of the reasons I decided to make this extra credit is between this class and my next class, I've got, what did I count? 35 of you, and only 2 people have done this so far. We're running out of time. We've got, in terms of when we meet, we've got next Thursday, and then Tuesday after that, and then Tuesday, Thursday after that, and then Tuesday after that. I'm still in my office hours. I won't have office hours next Wednesday because there are no classes that day, so I'm not coming up for 2 hours of office hours. But I, maintaining my office hours, you can come in and do it. Then after class is a little tricky because I've got another class to go to. But as I said, if you've already started, finish it and get, possibly, if you nail it, it's 100. I mean, if you almost get it perfectly, you got maybe 5 words wrong out of the 30 lines. That's going to be full points. Okay. If you skip a line, if you reverse a couple lines, if you forget some stuff, then it starts dropping down. But generally, when I've done this in the past, unless you just come in and just completely blow it, you're probably going to get at least 50% of whatever it's worth. Because most of you will remember probably just off the bat 90% of it. Okay? So it's just getting that little bit extra that helps, raise the boat, so to speak. All right, having said all that, jump into the never-ending play. Oh, let me add one other thing. If you're thinking of taking, because 2 people earlier told me they were, taking either of my 2 upper division courses in the spring, Britlet 1, I've been told this morning is full, which means it only has 15. It'll add more than that. My current class, I think, has 20 or 21. So if it is full, either talk to Cindy McGuffey right next door, she's the upper division secretary, or Dr. Ron Cates. Okay? If you talk to Cindy, she'll talk to Ron. And I don't know if there's another section of 3010. I think there is. If it's also full, then they'll start adding you into mine if you want it. If you don't want mine, you want the other person, that's fine too. The other class, History of the English Language, is getting close to the minimum full 15. They'll add more after that also. That class is a very expensive book, but you can get it on Kindle for about 1/5 the cost. I think it's like $30 on Kindle. The hard, which is the only one I can get, the hardbound cost through the bookstore is $154. It's less on Amazon. Bookstore contractually cannot purchase anything from Amazon, even though you can get great prices and such through Amazon. So, okay, we left off with Act 4, and we were going to start talking about Act 4, Scene 2, and I said we don't have time. Well, now we have time. So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are talking to Hamlet, excuse me, and They're talking to him about Polonius and such. And Rosencrantz says, "My lord," this is 25 or so, "my lord, you must tell us where the body is and go with us to the king." So notice, tell us where the body is, ... and go with us to the king. Hamlet hears that, and what does he do? Okay. The body is with the king, but the king is not with the body. Tell us where the body is, Polonius, and we've got to take you to the king. Hamlet conflates the two. Why? Because of a Renaissance notion about, and I think your introduction mentions this, the king's two bodies. Okay? What are the king's two bodies? Well, you've got the king's personal body, and you have the king's body politic. After all, how is young Fortinbras of Norway often referred to? Norway. When Claudius says he's sending Hamlet to another country to be taken care of, how does he refer to the king of that other country? Simply England. Why? Because of this idea that the king is the country. The country is the king. Okay? Queen Elizabeth frequently referred to herself as Britain or as England. So Hamlet takes these two separate things, because this is a different body. And notice, the body is with the king. What does that mean? The body of state is with the king. The king ought to be connected to the body politic, to the country. But, he says, the king is not with the body. How is Claudius not with Denmark? What has he done?
Well, he killed the last king.
And in doing so, what does he do? He divorces himself. He separates himself, really, ideally, from Denmark. Okay? Now take this idea and let's go back a few plays. The end of Richard II, or Henry IV, Part 1. What did Henry Bolingbroke do? He separated the king from the body. Richard from England, and he can get, even more metaphysical, and Richard from his body, in terms of what Exton did, at least. Okay? So is the body not with the king there? Because at the end of Richard II, and at the beginning of Henry IV, Part 1, it sounds like England is pretty much with Bolingbroke. They're pretty much in alignment, in agreement. So Shakespeare is bringing up this issue, and again, this play dates from right around 1599, 1602, maybe 1603. This is dangerous language. Why? Well, let's replace this with Queen Elizabeth. This, however, can be her physical body, or it can be the body of England. What has Queen Elizabeth seemingly not prepared England for? She dies in 1603. And she dies what? Heirless. There's a lot of turmoil in the late 1590s and the early 1600s. Who, within the body, will take the place? Well, there's nobody in the body that can take the place. Why? There's no royalty left in England. But she has secretly made a pact with King James VI of Scotland, who will come down and become King James I of England in 1603. So, the body is with the king, but the king is not with the body. The king is a thing, and notice Hamlet gets cut off. A thing, my lord? Of nothing. Now, it's important to bear in mind, in Shakespeare's day, that word nothing isn't necessarily pronounced that way. It's pronounced noting. Right? Kind of like if you hear somebody with a real strong Scots or Irish accent today, they'll say noting rather than nothing. I was just listening yesterday, kind of weird. And there's a thing on the internet, of the British Airways and Virgin Air, I think. 2 planes flying across Ireland getting ready to land into Heathrow, both of which saw multiple very bright lights go like up their left side and at a high rate of speed. And one of the air traffic controllers was from Shannon, Ireland. And he used the word ting, but he meant thing. Okay? And it kind of stuck in my mind as I was relooking at this morning. The king is a thing, my lord, of no ting. But it means this, and it can suggest also this. So if the king is a thing of noting, then what does that mean? Not nothing, noting. He's important. What else? Pay attention to him. Watch him. Okay? 4:3. The king and others come in. After Hamlet leaves, and the king says, a couple lines, we're going to pick up with the third line, line 3. Yet must not we put the strong law on him. Now, the 2 lines we skipped, he said, I've sent for Hamlet, I've asked for him to tell us where the body is, how dangerous it is if this man goes loose. In other words, we got to lock him up. But must not we put the strong law on him? Why not? He's loved of the distracted multitude. And there's that word we've seen it several times in this play. Distracted. Distracted means what? It kind of is tenuously related to this. Distracted means drawn away. Tract comes from tractare. It's the same word that gives us tractor. Tractor is something you use to pull something. Okay? Dis, away, opposite to. So it's something that is pulling something away from what it ought to be. Where should the multitude's traction be?
The king.
With the king. And instead, their eyes are where? On Hamlet. Most observed of all observers, whose, notice he says, loved of them, who like not in their judgment but their eyes. Well, what did Ophelia say in that observed of all observers speech? He is the eye, the hand, the form of the courtier, scholar, soldier. He's perfect. That's why the people are distracted by him. It's like where Hamlet goes, they're like, wow, look at that. Notice he says, they're not doing what? Using their reason. Using their judgment. Because their reason and judgment, if it was in force, according to Claudius's logic, would say what? Look at me. Why? I'm the king. But if Hamlet has wondered, prior to the ghost's appearance, that there was something fishy going on with his dad's death and his mother's quick marriage to his uncle, doesn't it bear to reason that maybe a few other people kind of thought, well, that was fast. Because after all, Horatio says, I came back to see your father's funeral. You liar. You came to see my mother's wedding. It was pretty fast. So, if those two thought it, who like not in their judgment but their eyes, and where 'tis so, that is, where that holds true, the offender's scourge is weighed, but never the offense. The offender's scourge, that is, the judgment, the discipline against the offender is weighed, but not what? Not what he did to deserve that judgment or that discipline. To bear all smooth and even. This sudden sending my way must seem deliberate pause. That is, the people have to see that this was kind of planned. It's not a half-baked, spur-of-the-moment thing. Okay? So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come in with Hamlet. And the king interviews him. Now, Hamlet, where's Polonius? At supper. At supper? Where? Not where he eats, but where he is eaten. So he is at supper, it's just he's the main dish. A certain convocation of politic worms are e'en at him. Your worm is your only emperor for diet. We fat all creatures else to fat us, and we fat ourselves from maggots. Your fat king and your lean beggar is but variable service. 2 dishes, but to 1 table. That's the end. And by the way, this speech from line 19 through 37, I could literally take an hour and a half just to talk about that speech. Because Shakespeare, as Shakespeare's wont to do, just crams all kinds of meaning in as few words as possible. William Faulkner said in his Nobel Prize winning speech, I think it was in this speech, he was a novelist because he wasn't a poet. Because poets say the most with the least number of words. Novelists take a lot of words. And if you read Faulkner, an awful lot of words. Usually that don't make a lot of sense. Okay? Had an entire graduate course in Faulkner, which I actually loved. So, a certain convocation of politic worms, where e'en at him your worm is your only emperor. Well, look at your gloss down there. Politic worms. Crafty worms suited to a master spy, like Polonius. Oh, that's right. I'm using a different edition. This one does not give you that. I was thinking the Intro to Lit course textbook has a footnote there I was going to talk about. A certain convocation, he says, of politic worms. I put something up on the board a couple weeks back that talked about this, but using slightly different words. An actual historical convocation, not of worms, however, the diet of Worms, 1521. What is a convocation? If you attend MTSUs every August, couple days before the beginning of the semester, there is a fall convocation. What does the word convocation literally mean? Con, together. Close. What is a vocation?
A job.
Close. That's occupation. It's a calling. See, there's a difference between an occupation and a calling, right? I don't think most people flipping burgers at McDonald's. That's not their calling in life. The thing that fulfills them. For some, it might be, and I'm not knocking that at all. But for others, that's a stepping stone. Maybe they want to be a manager at McDonald's. You start out how? Flipping burgers. Okay? So, a convocation is a calling together. Hamlet uses that word. He is at a convocation of worms. Not where he is eaten, but where is eaten. Okay? That's the calling. The worms have come in. Notice, by the way, how prevalent worms are in Hamlet's mind. You know, have you a daughter? Keep her out of the sun. Maggot breeding, you know, carrying and such. So what's the deal of worms? Did I talk about that?
Wasn't that where they called Martin Luther there to talk about his theses?
Exactly. That's where he publishes the 95 Theses in October 31st, 1517. And 4 years later, he gets an opportunity to actually, he thinks, have the discussion he wanted to have 4 years ago. And so, the Holy Roman Emperor calls him to Worms, and Luther thinks he's finally going to have that talk with the theologians and such. And he gets there, he's given a promise of safe passage to and from. Okay? So he won't be accosted, arrested on his way there, and he won't be accosted or arrested when he leaves. He'll be allowed to leave and such. He goes there, and what he finds out is in the hall, everything he has written in the last 4 years, everything is all piled up. And he's told, take it back. Recant. Say, I was wrong. And according to one of his most prominent biographers, Roland Banton, Luther comes back the next morning after prayer, meditation, and such, comes back and says, unless it's proven to me by Holy Scripture, by conscience, or, and I can never remember the third thing, here I stand, I can do no other. That is, I stick with every last word I wrote. This is all true. You are all wrong. Okay? And then he leaves. And it's really after that the Protestant Reformation just takes fire. Okay? Because everything he's written just starts flying off the presses. Broadsheets, you know, things like that. So, Hamlet / Shakespeare, and I'm not saying Shakespeare speaks through the character of Hamlet, but Shakespeare uses this language intentionally. Why? He wants to bring to his audience's mind the difference, or the differences between Catholic and Protestant theology. Because it does have a bit of importance in the play, as we've already seen with the ghost. Because if you're a good Protestant, what do you not acknowledge? There is no purgatory. It's heaven or hell. There's no in-between place. So, we fat all creatures, else to fat us. Right? You don't want to eat a skinny cow. You want it big and fat, you know. To do what? To make us fat. Why? So that we can fatten maggots. So what's the purpose of life?
To be eaten by worms.
To be worm food. Now, is this part of Hamlet's antic disposition? Or do we see elements of this before he gives that little speech to Horatio and the others? Like in the, oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt, thaw, resolve itself into a dew. The king. He goes on. Your fat king and your lean beggar is but variable service. Variable service. Different dishes on a table. Your fat king, big turkey. Lean beggar, side of mashed potatoes. Why does the king go, alas, alas? I know we haven't finished Hamlet's little speech, but because what has Hamlet just said? King, beggar, no difference. Two dishes, but to one table, that's the end. What do those last three lines mean? What are the various meanings of the word end? Terminate. What else? Finish. Along with that, maybe completion. Consequence. What about in the phrase ends and means? Like, do the ends justify the means? What does ends there mean?
Results?
Is that results? Ends justify the means. Ends there in that phrase does not mean results. It means purposes. The intention of something. Its ultimate isness, if you want. That is, its purpose for being. Okay? In Greek, it would be its telos. Teleology is the study of purposes or final ends, if you want. Why something is. What, for example, I'm going to borrow this for just a second. What, for example, is the telos, not of what's in here, but of this thing? Yeah, its purpose is to hold a liquid. Okay? And then when you're done with it, whatever. So, Hamlet says that is the end, or that's the end. The end of what? Kings, beggars. Notice the spectrum. Kings, beggars. What has he just done? Yep, but he's taken all of humanity from the very highest to the very lowest. What's our end? It's the very same. Doesn't matter whether you're living under a bridge or living in a palace. We all die. That's the point. We all die and become food for maggots. Alas, alas. It's like Claudius is scandalized by this. How dare you? But yet, what was Claudius's first real speech to Hamlet? You know, after Hamlet talks with his mother about his father's death, and she says, "Why seems it so particular to you? Seems, madam? Nay, I know not seems." And then the king comes in and says, "Your father lost his. He lost his father," etc. It is common in man. And you, Hamlet, you show a will that is what? Obstinate to heaven, impious, unmanly, blah, 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 blah. Why? Because the whole purport of Claudius' speech there is, it's the nature of living things to die. And yet here, he acknowledges that, but it's kind of like, yeah, but I die better than that slob over there. So, Hamlet. A man may fish with the worm that hath eat of a king, an idea he's going to bring up in Act 5, and eat of the fish that hath fed of that worm. You know, Claudius is like, how dare you? You just said, I'm going to become fish food. And then what? If I'm going to become fish food, and somebody then goes fishing and catches that fish, they will then eat me. Nothing, what dost thou mean by this? The king's like, what the hell, Hamlet? Maybe you really are crazy. What do you mean? Nothing but to show you. So is it nothing or is it noting? pay particular attention here, folks, because I'm going to give you a little image, and it's a rather disgusting, foul one. Nothing but to show you how a king may go a progress through the guts of a beggar. The king may come in here and go out here. In other words, the king may be a pile of, it's probably hanging a fence. Where's Polonius? Why doesn't the king ask, what do you mean, Hamlet? It's pretty clear. Where's Polonius? In heaven. Well, it's charitable, Hamlet, right? Send thither to see. Notice the verb. Send. If your messenger find him not there, seek him in the other place yourself. Protestant or Catholic? Only two options. He doesn't say, in heaven, if he's not there, send your messenger to purgatory because he might be there. Now, you could say he makes the stark opposition solely because, as Polonius said, brevity is the soul of wit, and Hamlet really wants to get to the point. Go to hell, Claudius. I mean, that's what the whole purpose of that little part's for. Go to hell. Okay? But if indeed you find him not within this month, you shall nose him up as you go up the stairs into the lobby. Nose him up. You'll see him as your nose kind of crosses over the stairs. Your eyes come first. It could also mean you'll smell him. So, king orders attendants, go get the body. And he says, Hamlet, we got to get you out of here. Prepare thyself. Hamlet, hey, England, yay, fun. Aye, Hamlet, good. So is it if thou knewst our purposes. I see a cherub that sees them. That is, I have a little ministering spirit who tells me what your purposes are. But come for England. Farewell, dear mother. Thy loving father, Hamlet, that is, Claudius goes up to give him a hug. Hamlet, my mother. Father and mother is man and wife. Man and wife is one flesh. And so, my mother. In other words, and he gives him the single finger German salute. So, Claudius says, when everybody leaves, and England, if my love thou holdst at aught, as my great power thereof may give thee sense. In other words, if you don't do what I tell you to do, I'm going to invade. Since yet thy cicatrice looks raw and red after the Danish sword, and thy free awe pays homage to us. That is, England is like a vassal nation to Denmark. This is supposedly during the Viking times. What? By letters congruing to that effect, the present death of Hamlet. Did Hamlet say earlier when he said, the thing about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, when he said, 'tis the custom to have the engineer hoist with his own petard, did he say they were going to carry me to my death? No, he just says, I don't trust them. In fact, I trust them like I do adder's fang. So, 4-4. We see young Fortinbras. And Hamlet's being led with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Notice they've got to go across the land first to where they come to the port, catch a ship. And they speak to the captain. And the captain tells them what Fortinbras is doing there. Lines 18 and following. And he says, the land that they're getting ready to fight for hath no profit in it but the name. To pay 5 ducats. 5. I would not farm it. That is, I wouldn't buy that piece of land for 5 ducats. Say $5. Well, then the Polack never shall defend it. Oh, it's already garrisoned. Already garrisoned means they've already got their troops there. 2,000 souls in 20,000 ducats will not debate the question of this straw. Straw. What is straw worth? 2,000 ducats, 20,000 souls will not debate. What's Hamlet mean by debate? Resolve. So what will? The deaths of an awful lot of men. This is the impostum of much wealth and peace, that inward breaks and shows no cause without why the man dies. So the captain goes. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern walk off. Hamlet says, give me a few minutes. How all occasions do inform against me and spur my dull revenge. All occasions. Everything I see around me says one thing: revenge. Well, how does this little occasion do that? What is a man if his chief good and market of his time be but to sleep and feed? Now, Shakespeare wouldn't know this because I don't think it had been published yet. Wake up, stupid phone. But a little bit after, yeah, about 45 years after this play, the Presbyterian Church in England, 1646, draws up what's called the Westminster Confession of Faith. That is the catechism for good Presbyterians. Okay? Now I said, this is 40 years after Hamlet. But these are ideas that are in this. These are ideas that have been around already. They've been around since John Calvin's time, 1530s. Okay? The very first point of the Westminster Confession of Faith asks the question, what is the chief end of man? There's that word. Purpose. And the writers of the Westminster Confession of Faith says, to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. Hamlet asks, what is a man if his chief good, that's his chief purpose, is what? In market of his time, use of his time, is but to sleep and feed. What is a man if all he's here for is to eat and sleep? What would that make humanity? What would that reduce humanity to? Animals. Animals. We're going to see in Lear, Lear's going to have all of his retainers stripped away. In one of his daughters, the daughter who strips all of them finally away, is going to say, what needst thou have more than one? That is one retainer, one servant. And Lear will say, need? Reck not the need. What is man if you strip away clothing, shelter, etc., nothing but a forked animal? And what Lear is getting at there is, we're different than the animals. We do need more than them. And I, as former king, ought to have a few retainers. Well, he wants 100, but. So, a beast, no more. Sure, he that made us with such large discourse, your gloss, power of reasoning, ability to reason, looking before and after. What does that mean, looking before? Look back on the past. How far? To just your birth? Your family lineage? 14.4 billion years? Boom. Big Bang. The looking before is kind of asking, why am I here? What's my purpose? Where have I come from? And after, what comes next? You know, Albus Dumbledore famously tells Harry Potter at the end of the first book, death is but the next great adventure, Harry, to the well-organized mind. That is, it's not an end. Looking before and after, he that made us gave us not that capability and godlike reason to fuss in us unused. Fussed means to grow moldy, mildewy, to rot. Henry David Thoreau, Walden, said, the mass of humanity live lives of quiet desperation. Why? Because they walk around half awake. They get up, they go to work, they come home, they eat, they go to bed, they get up, they go to work, they come home, they eat, they go to bed. And they don't do what he says he went to Walden to do. To so live as to suck the marrow out of life so that when he died, he will know, I really lived. Now, whether it be bestial oblivion, you die and disappear. Why? Shakespeare did not think all dogs go to heaven. Or some craven scruple of thinking too precisely on the event. What event? Death. A thought which quartered hath but one part wisdom and ever 3 parts coward. Right? Because, I mean, oh, that this too sullied flesh, to be or not to be. What's Hamlet been getting at in all of those speeches? Not only about thinking of suicide, but what else? What does thinking do? It casts over the native hue of resolution pale cast of thought. It takes that determination and goes, well, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should be prudent. Back off. Look at my options. I do not know why yet I live to say this thing's to do. What is this thing specifically? Kill Claudius. He doesn't know why I yet live. That is, why haven't I done it? Since I have cause and will, that is desire, volition, ability, and strength, I'm man enough, and means to do it. Well, he had means to do it, right? Back in Act 3, what does he do? He walks by, Claudius is there, he's down in prayer. Now I might do a pat. And then what? But now he's praying. Rather than, die, you rotten bastard, you know. Examples gross as earth exhort me. Gross as earth means as common as earth. Well, how common is earth? Pretty common, because we live on it. When is this army of such mass and charge, led by, we're not even Act 5, led by a delicate and tender prince, that is, young Fortinbras, whose spirit with divine ambition puff makes mouths at the invisible event. Look at your gloss. Makes scornful faces. At what invisible event? Death? Oh yeah, death. Well, he's not afraid of death. How do you know? Because he's leading the march for this little crappy piece of land, exposing what is mortal and insure to all that fortune, death, and danger dare, even for an eggshell. He's exposing himself to death for what? Well, what does Falstaff call honor? A mere escutcheon, like a logo. That's all it is. It's something that can be applied. It's also something that can be taken off. How? Because you die. Hamlet calls it a mere egg shell, not an egg. What's the difference between an eggshell and an egg?
One of them has sustenance.
One has the nutrient in it. The other one, no. And how strong is an eggshell? It's gone. Rightly to be great is not to stir without great argument. That is, Polonius' speech. Don't enter into a quarrel. But if you do, what? Win. So, rightly to be great is not to stir without great argument. Don't let somebody cutting you off on the road or taking your parking spot, because for murder. That's not a great argument. I know every now and then at MTSU it might seem like it is. Happened several years ago over on Bell Street. Wasn't murdered, but a girl was stabbed. So, it's true. It happened, and the one who did the stabbing went to prison for like 15 to 20 years. For a frickin' parking spot, people. Be late. It's not that important. Rightly to be great is not to stir without great argument, but greatly to find quarrel in a straw when honor's at stake. So what is Hamlet saying about honor? Honor is a great argument. Why? Throw Falstaff out the window. Is honor a mere sketch in Hamlet? No, it's not. Because what is it based on? One's personal sense of integrity. It's like, here I'll use a popular culture reference. Week before the election, Saturday night before the election, SNL did a skit. Pete Davidson did, weekly update. And he did a skit, and he had a picture of Dan Crenshaw, who's a Navy SEAL. I think he was a SEAL. Who lost an eye in Afghanistan, right eye, in Afghanistan, got better, grew a new eye back, not that kind of thing, wore an eye patch, and then went back for 2 more tours with one eye. Okay? And Davidson said, here's this guy, and he's running for Congress in Houston, and yeah, the eye patch, makes him look like a porno director. And he goes, yeah, I know, I'm sorry, he lost it in a war or whatever. Okay? Well, a lot of people got pretty angry at that. So, last Saturday, I don't watch Shine and Laugh, I just, read this. Last Saturday night, because of the hue and cry, Saturday Night Live invited Crenshaw onto the show to apologize. He said, sure. And so he shows up, and Davison apologizes to him on the set, in the cast of Weekly Update or Nightly Update, whatever it is. And then, the other guy says, well, why don't you take some shots at him? So they do like 3 little clips of Davison looking like one of those little dwarf figures with the funny hair. It looks like a troll doll with, bad hair. So a troll doll with bad hair, because don't they all have bad hair? And a couple other things. And the audience laughs and everything. And then they finish it, and I've not seen this part. I've only seen the other part. They get kind of serious for a minute. And Crenshaw just says, we're coming up on Veterans Day, essentially. Never forget. So when you say thank you to a veteran, you are saying, I'm with you. And he looked at Davidson and said, never forget. And Davidson sat there, and then, and this is the point I want to get at about honor. Crenshaw said, and never forget that Pete Davidson's dad was a firefighter in New York on 9/11 and died when he was 7 years old. And Davidson said, never forget. What did that one scene do? It showed the kind of honor Hamlet is talking about. In other words, Crenshaw doesn't have this huge inflated ego about himself. And I would say, maybe on the basis of that, neither does Pete Davidson. As a 24-year-old who other than losing his father in 9/11, I have no idea what kind of life he's had. I have a little bit of an idea what kind of life Crenshaw had, who had served, I think, 8 years, maybe longer than that. Saw, hell and back, etc. There's that inner strength, that inner integrity of doing what one believes in one's moral compass of what is right. So Hamlet says, when that is attacked, yeah, then you go all out. How stand I then, that have a father killed, a mother stained, excitements of my reason and blood? Reason? Because this is morally wrong. Blood? That's my father he killed. That's my mother he stained. And let all sleep. That is, I let my reason and my blood sleep, while to my shame I see the imminent death of 20,000 men. For what? That for a fantasy and trick of fame go to their graves like beds. What's the trick of fame? Never forget. It's that they died for what purpose? Serving their country. Hamlet is not questioning their honor. He's saying these men die nobly while I live ignobly. Fight for a plot whereon the numbers cannot try, that is, prove the cause, which is not tomb enough and continent to hide the slain. The plot of land they're fighting over, Hamlet says, isn't even big enough to contain the dead. Oh, from this time forth, my thoughts be bloody, or be nothing worth. Yeah, well, we still have a lot of thoughts that are going to come up from Hamlet, because they're not all that bloody. So, 4-5, we see Ophelia come in. And Gertrude and the king see her. And how does Ophelia appear? Mad as a hatter. She's just gone. And the king says, line 77 or so, this is the poison of deep grief. It springs all from her father's death. And he says, now, Gertrude, kind of take note. When sorrows come, they come how? Not single spies, but in battalions. That is, when fortune turns her wheel, she doesn't turn it slowly when you're on this trajectory. It's like, boom. When it hits the fan, a whole bunch of it hits that fan at once. And life just... So, what were the sorrows that came? First, her father slain. Next, your son gone. What's he implying? And she loves him. And he, most violent author of his own, just removed. The people muddied. How are the people muddied? And notice, these are things not as much for Ophelia as they are kind of to him. People muddied, thick and unwholesome in their thoughts and whispers for good Polonius' death, and we have done but greenly and hugger-mugger to intern him. That is, and we didn't give him a good, fancy state funeral. Poor Ophelia, divided from herself in her fair judgment. He introduces the idea of insanity as creating a divided person. The very idea Hamlet is going to take and say, well, I didn't kill Polonius. No, that wasn't me. Because Hamlet in his right mind would never do that. No, that was Hamlet's madness that killed. Call that Hamlet B. Because Hamlet A would never do that. And then last, her brothers in secret come from France. The messenger comes in. The messenger says, the rabble are calling Laertes Lord, meaning Screw the House of Hamlet. We're done with the House of Hamlet. We want a new king. Laertes. Okay. So, Laertes comes in. He's spitting mad. The king tells Gertrude, let him go. Line 126. Do not fear our person. Why? That such divinity doth hedge a king, that treason can but peep to what it would. Well, he's never read Richard II. What divinity? What hedge? King? What about the previous king? How did divinity hedge that king? That treason can but peep to what it would, acts little of his will. So I'm not worried about you, Laertes. Why? You're like a fly. So, where's my father? Dead. Queen, not by him. How came he dead? Who killed him? So they talk, and we're going to skip a lot of this. Ophelia comes back in, and Laertes sees she's crazy. Lines 207 and following, the king says, I'll fill you in. Just calm down a little bit. We'll talk. In 216, Laertes says, his means of death, his obscure funeral, no trophy, sword, nor hatchment over his bones, no noble right, like he didn't even get Christian burial, nor formal ostentation. I want to know all. King, fine. So Horatio comes in, Act 4:6. And he reads a letter from Hamlet. Ere we were 2 days old at sea, a pirate of very warlike appointment gave us chase. Finding ourselves too slow of sail, we put on a compelled valor, and in the grapple I boarded them. On the instant they got clear of our ship, so I alone became their prisoner. They have dealt with me like thieves of mercy, but they knew what they did. I am to do a good turn for them. Let the king have the letters I have sent. And repair thou to me with as much speed as thou wouldst fly death. I have words to speak in thine ear. So, on their way to England, pirates accosted them. Hamlet boarded the pirate ship. He tried to help take control. He was taken prisoner. The pirates are going to set him free. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are back on their way to England still. 4:7. We see the king and Laertes talk, and the king receives the letter from Hamlet. High and mighty, you shall know, line 45. You shall know I am set naked on your kingdom. Tomorrow shall I beg leave to see your kingly eyes, when I shall, first asking your pardon, thereto recount the occasion of my sudden and more strange return. Now your gloss says naked, destitute, unarmed, without following. I think naked can also kind of mean brazen. Like standing up, opposing, brave, if you want. So, what do the king and Laertes do in the rest of that scene? Plot Hamlet's death, which is, go a little bit farther. By whom? So Laertes is getting what? Revenge. Right? Because Hamlet killed his father. We're back at the beginning of the play. Okay? The king is also plotting, but is it revenge? No, it's protection. So, king says, here's what we'll do. Do a fencing match. I'll pour a little bit of poison in a cup. I'll offer it to Hamlet. He'll drink. Laertes says, and just to make sure, I'll poison the tip of my spear, my foil. It will be unbaited. That is, it won't have a rubber tip on the end. 5-1. We get a clown scene. For what purpose? What time is it? 9:05. Well, Act 4 kind of built up the tension a bit. But Shakespeare realizes, I can't just keep building. I've got to get a little bit of comedic relief. I've got to tone it down a little bit, and then I'm going to amp it back up. So, what's the purpose of this comedic relief? I don't mean purpose to lower the tension a little bit. I mean, what's the purpose of the clown's speeches and then the clown's or gravedigger's speeches with Hamlet? What are the gravediggers talking about at the beginning? Whose grave is it? It's Ophelia's. Then one clown asks, whose grave is it? Man or woman? Then the other guy says, it's neither. Why? Because the body that is going in the grave once was a man or a woman, but now it's just a dead corpse. It's not a man or a woman anymore. Why? Because man or woman, according to the gravedigger, has got to be a living, breathing body. Okay? Where's it being buried? In the churchyard. So what's the other question that then immediately comes up? Why is the body being buried in the churchyard when the person who used to inhabit the body killed herself? Well, we're not sure about that. The coroner's inquest. So why is that an issue?
Because you can't have a proper Christian burial if you commit suicide.
You can't have a Christian burial if you commit suicide. And you can't bury a suicide in hallowed ground. She should be, if this is the fence, hallowed ground, unhallowed, she ought to be right here. According to the second gravedigger. Okay? So, Hamlet comes in. And the guy's, digging and throwing up skulls and singing little ditties. Has this feeling, line 65, has this fellow no feeling of his business, as sings in grave making? Horatio, custom hath made it in him a property of easiness. Custom. He's buried a lot of bodies. It doesn't register to him anymore. And we're kind of back to Claudius's long speech to Hamlet about death is common to men. Hamlet, 'tis even so. The hand of little employment hath the daintier sense. So, he throws up another skull. Hamlet, that skull had a tongue in it, could sing once. I mean, that skull that tongue might have circumvented God, might it not? Sure could. Or a courtier? Yeah. Why, even so, and now my lady worms, chapless and knocked about the mazard. And then he throws up another skull, and Hamlet says, that could have been a lawyer, and he talks about what lawyers do. Could have been a buyer of land, etc., etc. Hamlet asks, line 128 or so, what man dost thou dig it for? No man. What woman? None. Why? Because neither of them are that. So, Hamlet asks the gravedigger, how long hast thou been gravedigger? 141. And he says, of all the days in the year, I came to it that day that our last king Hamlet overcame Fortinbras, or Fortinbras. Which Fortinbras? The elder deceased king of Norway, young Fortinbras' father. So notice, Hamlet Sr., Hamlet Jr. Fortinbras Sr., Fortinbras Jr. Hamlet. Well, how long is that since? Cannot you tell that? That is, everybody knows that. Every fool can tell that. It was that very day that young Hamlet was born. He that is mad and sent into England. Why is he sent to England? Well, it's because he's mad. He'll recover his wits there, or if he doesn't, 'tis no great matter. Why? We'll not be seen in him there. There, the men are as mad as he. And you got to imagine the groundlings standing down in front in the pit. They're slapping themselves silly over this. Oh, we're all crazy bastards. Okay? So they keep talking, and the first clown says, line 161, I have been sexton here, man and boy, 30 years. How old is Hamlet? He's 30. Does Hamlet, up to this point, seem like a 30-year-old? No. After all, he's a university student. Is he on the, eternal plan? Is he a full-time graduate student? You know, doesn't want to go off into the real world? What would going off into the real world mean for Hamlet? Louder? Eventually he would be king, but until that eventuality, he's what? He's Prince freaking Charles. 75 years old, just waiting for mom to kick. Okay? 30 years old. How old is Ophelia? Do you get the impression she's 30, 25, 20? Because usually in productions, she's not nearly as old as Hamlet. She's a teenager. 18, maybe 19, maybe a little bit younger. Okay? So they keep talking about bodies and such. And the gravedigger throws up Yorick's skull. Alas, poor Yorick. Notice Hamlet never says the line that is attributed to him. He never says, alas, poor Yorick, I knew him well. I knew him, Horatio, a fellow of infinite jest. And he talks about Yorick. And then Hamlet asks Horatio a question. You think Alexander looked of this fashion in the earth? That is Alexander the Great, he who conquered the known world by the time he was, 23? Even so. Smelt so. Even so. To what base uses we may return, Horatio. And one of you asked about doing, I don't think he's here. One of you asked about doing a paper on Shakespeare's puns. Look at that pun. To what base uses. He's punning on the meaning of the word base, meaning foundation as well as what? Vulgar, low, useless, dirty almost. So what are the vulgar, low, dirty, useless uses? Mud, dirt. Why not may imagination trace the noble dust of Alexander till it find it stopping a bunghole? Horatio, that were to consider too curiously to consider so. In other words, Hamlet, you're overthinking. Come back to earth. No. Come work with me here. Alexander died. Alexander was buried. Alexander returneth to dust. The dust is earth. Of earth we make loam. And of that loam, why might we not convert it to stop a beer barrel? Might stop a hole to keep the wind away. Oh, that earth which kept the world in awe should patch a wall to expel the winter's flaw. Is that the chief end of man? To plug a beer cask? Or is it to feed worms, to feed fish, to feed emperors, to go through the guts of an emperor? So, he and Horatio hide when the others come in. Yeah, we're not going to finish Hamlet. We'll get really close. And we hear the priest, because Laertes says, what ceremony else? Come on, what ceremony else? They're getting ready. They lower the grave. They lower the coffin into the grave. And the priest just kind of goes, gives a little blessing. He goes, no. Full funeral rites. He goes, well, we can't. Must there no more be done? No more be done. We should profane the service of the dead to sing a requiem and such rest to her as to peace-parted souls. So if she does not have a peace-parted soul, where is she? Kind of depends on whether you're in the Catholic frame of mind or the Protestant frame of mind. Laertes, I tell thee, churlish priest, a ministering angel shall my sister be when thou liest howling. You are going to hell. She will be an angel. Hamlet, what? The fair Ophelia? Hamlet hasn't heard that Ophelia's dead. Now he does. The queen scatters flowers. Laertes jumps into the grave, embraces Ophelia. Sorry, I referred to a coffin. There is no coffin. It's just a body wound in a sheet. And so Hamlet comes forth. What is he whose grief bears such an emphasis, whose phrase of sorrow conjures the wandering stars, makes them stand like wonder-wounded hearers? This is I, Hamlet the Dane. In Laertes, grabs him by the throat. Thou priest not well, because he says, the devil take thy soul. I prithee take thy fingers from off my throat. For though I am not splenitive and rash, that is, I do not act according to my spleen, which governs one part of the passions. Rash anger, just acting out, even though, what ho, a rat? That was a little rash. Yet have I in me something dangerous, which let thy wisdom fear. Back off, buddy. So, they're parted. I loved Ophelia. 40,000 brothers could not with all their quantity of love make up my sum. What wilt thou do for her? King. He's mad, Laertes, don't go near him. So, Hamlet says what he'll do. He'll weep, he'll fight, he'll fast, he'll tear thyself, he'll drink up ice, he'll eat a crocodile. I'll do it all. Okay? So they're separated, they go their own ways. 5-2. Hamlet enters with Horatio, tells him about the letters, that my head should be struck off, and he doesn't only tell him about the letters. What else does he do? He pulls them out. Produces the actual document, the evidence. Top of 1144. Okay. Horatio asks, how is this sealed? That is, how were these letters, these commands sealed? Even in that was heaven ordinant. That is, heaven ordained everything. Predestined. I had my father's signet in my purse. What's his signet? His ring. And kind of like this one, it had an image on it. If it's his father's, then what is it? It's the king's. Okay? Which was the model of that Danish shield. Folded the writ up in the form of the other. And what did he do? Heated some wax. Put the imprint of the seal on. The rest thou knowest already. So Guildenstern and Rosencrantz go to it. Why, man, they did make love to this employment. That is, they wanted this. Not to die, but to serve the king. They are not near my conscience. Hamlet's saying, I don't feel any guilt for them. Their defeat does by their own insinuation grow. 'Tis dangerous when the baser nature comes between the past and fell insensate points of mighty opposites. What are the mighty opposites? Hamlet, Claudius. Who are the baser nature? Polonius, Ophelia, Laertes. Okay. Horatio, what a king is this? I can't believe it. Is what he means. Hamlet, don't think about it. Stand me now upon. He that killed my king, whored my mother, popped in between the election and my hopes. The election, it was the Germanic custom. Yes, you do have primogeniture of kings, but before that son becomes king, that son has to be approved by the council. There are times when those sons aren't approved. Alfred the Great's line, for example, one of his brothers did not get the approval because he wasn't mentally capable. Okay? So, Hamlet says, and is it not to be damned to let this canker of our nature come? Let me back up. He thrown out his angle for my proper life, and with such cozenage, is it not perfect conscience to quit him with this arm? Perfect conscience. Now, does Hamlet have cause, let's say, to kill Claudius. Maybe not in a court of law, but is it merely revenge now? See, revenge goes against Hamlet's Christianity. Claudius tried to kill me. He's getting what? Hamlet is going to get his delayed justifiable homicide, let's say. And is it not to be damned to let this canker of our nature come in further evil? That is, wouldn't it be wrong if we let Claudius go on? Horatio, it must be shortly known to him from England what is the issue of the business here. He's going to find out. It'll be short. The interim is mine. That is, all I need's a few minutes. Okay? Osric comes in. For what purpose? Summon him to the palace. Why? Laertes wants to have a little fencing match with you. And the king's going to bet on you. Okay? They go back and forth. Hamlet comes in. Line 199. I am constant to my purposes. They follow the king's pleasure. If his fitness speaks, mine is ready. That is, if Laertes is ready, I'm ready. So, the queen says, the Lord says, the queen desires you to use some gentle entertainment to Laertes before you fall to play. What does that really mean? She wants you to apologize. She wants you to go up to Laertes and make up. She doesn't want this play to devolve into anger. Okay? Horatio, when the Lord leaves, you're going to lose. Hamlet, I don't think so. Since he went into France, I have been in continual practice. I shall win at the odds. That is, I won't win outright. That is, on the basis of beating the odds, then I'll win. So he says, but thou wouldst not think how ill all's here about my heart. But it is no matter. Hamlet is saying, my heart is not at peace. There's something wrong. Nay, good my lord. It is but foolery. It is such a kind of gain-giving as would perhaps trouble a woman. He's essentially saying, I've got butterflies. I don't know that I should do this. Listen to Horatio, the voice kind of Roman wisdom. If your mind dislike anything, obey it. If your gut tells you don't do it, don't do it. There is, I will forestall their repair hither and say you are not fit. That is, I'll put it off. And we'll stop with Hamlet's little speech here. Talk about it first. Not a whit. We defy augury. I don't pay any attention to prophecy, so to speak. There is special providence in the fall of a sparrow. Why? Because Christ said, not a sparrow falls that God doesn't know about. And don't you think you're more important than a sparrow? If it be now, what's the it? My death. If it be now, 'tis not to come. Well, duh. Because if it's now, then it's not later. If it be not to come, if it's not going to be later, then it'll be now. If it be not now, yet it will come. What's Hamlet's point? We all gotta die. Maybe it's now. If it is, fine. Maybe it's later. If it is, fine. The readiness is all. The readiness for what? To die. Those 12 people shot in that bar in California the other day. Hamlet is saying, if Hamlet were aware of that, were they ready? Some of them were, we know. Because some of them were guys who threw themselves and leaned over in front of the shooter, using their bodies to block the bullets from patrons in front of them. That's the readiness. That's being prepared. Hamlet is saying, what is the most important thing? Is it that death comes to everyone? No. It's what? That you're prepared to die. Okay, we'll stop there. We'll finish this fairly quickly because it doesn't take much to do the last two. And hopefully get a bunch into King Lear. Probably not, but I'm going to, hold out hope.